Welcome to the Compact Mysteries podcast from compactmysteries.com, the show where we try to unravel a different bite-sized mystery each week, from baffling disappearances and strange objects to unexplained events and mysterious places. This is episode 46, The Mystery of the Devil's Footprints. In the dead of night on the 8th of February 1855, the quiet countryside of Devon, England, was blanketed in fresh snow. To the locals, it was an ordinary midwinter scene, until dawn broke and they found something extraordinary, a trail of hoof-shaped prints stretching for miles across fields, rooftops, walls, and even frozen rivers. These were called the Devil's Footprints, or sometimes the Devil's Hoof Marks, an inexplicable trace in the snow that has baffled scientists, folklorists, and mystery lovers ever since. The prints appeared suddenly after a heavy snowfall, and by morning they had stirred a mix of fear, fascination, and uproar. They were unlike anything known to local fauna, and traversed every kind of obstacle with apparent impunity. In some places the marks seemed to cross walls or shingles, pass over drain pipes, and run across rooftops in single file, as though the strange entity, or force, that made them simply ignored gravity and geometry. Estimates of how far the prints stretched vary widely. Some say they covered 40 miles, while others suggest they may have ranged up to 100 miles across the snow-covered landscape of East and South Devon, and possibly into Dorset. Dozens of reports emerged from towns like Exmouth, Topsham, Dawlish, and Teignmouth, describing cloven hoof impressions about 4 inches long and 3 inches wide, spaced between 8 and 16 inches apart. Many villagers refused to leave their homes after dark, convinced the devil himself might be roaming the countryside. To this day, the mystery endures. What left those imprints? And how could it have walked over walls, rooftops, rivers, and fences without breaking stride? What makes the devil's footprints especially perplexing is not just their length, but their path. Unlike a creature walking a winding course, these prints often followed straight lines, leaping over obstacles rather than navigating around them. Farmers reported that stacks of hay or fences did not interrupt the tracks. In some cases, the prints stopped on one side of an object and then restarted on the other, with no visible disturbance to the object itself. In others, footprints appeared on roofs and over the tops of walls. There are even claims that some prints passed through drain pipes as small as 4 inches in diameter, though those accounts are contested. In various locations, the marks were found directly on either side of doorways or cafes or churchyards, without any visible disturbance to the intervening space. The prints were almost always in single file, suggesting a humanoid or bipedal gait rather than a quadruped. It was, to Victorian sensibilities, a demon walking among them, and many baptized it so. Over the decades, a variety of explanations have been proposed, ranging from plausible to far-fetched. None has gained universal acceptance, but each adds colour to the mystery. Hoax or human trickery. One of the earliest and simplest theories is that the prints were made deliberately by pranksters or groups of people. Some suggest stilts or improvised devices might have produced hoof-like marks. Others propose that multiple characters coordinated to create the trail across village after village. Some have argued that the prints' neatness and consistency suggest human design. However, the scale and complexity of the prints complicate that explanation. To create tracks over 40 to 100 miles overnight, skipping fences, crossing rivers, and mounting roofs while preserving continuity would require an organized effort, speed, and secrecy. Many of the reported areas were remote and dispersed. The logistics alone make hoaxing the entire phenomenon improbable. Animal tracks and rodents? Several animal-based theories have been advanced. Among them, kangaroos, perhaps the most sensational. Soon after news of the phenomenon spread, the Reverend G.M. Musgrave suggested a pair of kangaroos might have escaped from a private menagerie in Sidmouth. Kangaroos hop in ways that can leave prints reminiscent of hooves and might bound over small obstacles. But kangaroos do not naturally roam Devon, and they could hardly scale rooftops, cross fencing flawlessly, or sustain prints over extensive snow terrain. Musgrave later admitted that the kangaroo idea was part humour, part distraction. Rodents or mice? Some researchers, such as Mike Dash, proposed that hopping rodents like wood mice could leave double print marks that resemble cloven hooves. The idea is that when they hop, their hind feet land close together, creating paired impressions on the ground. Under certain snow conditions, particularly where thawing or refreezing occurs, these may coalesce into shapes that resemble a single hoofprint, but rodents would struggle to cross large distances or climb walls or roofs as described in many reports. Badgers or other mammals. Another idea is that local quadrupeds, such as badgers, left prints in shallow snow that were distorted by wind or melting. The problem is that badgers rarely behave in a single file or leap over obstacles, such as rooftops or rivers. None fit all the observations. Balloon or rope theory. One imaginative theory is that the prints were made by shackles or chains trailing from a drifting hot air balloon or an experimental balloon launched from the Devon port dockyard. The idea is that a balloon's mooring ropes or shackles might have scraped the snow as the balloon drifted, creating intermittent prints over a path. Proponents argue this could explain prints on roofs, across rivers, or over fields, as the balloon might have soared over obstacles. However, skeptics point out that balloon tracks would likely snag on trees, brush, or structures. Also, maintaining a stable drift over dozens of miles in a zigzag path would be difficult. Moreover, one would expect disturbances, tangling, or failure of the device. Still, it remains a creative idea that has drawn interest in folk speculation circles. Supernatural or cryptid explanations. Given the era and the nature of the phenomenon, many attributed the tracks to the supernatural, demons, satanic visitation, or unknown creatures cloaked in myth. In Victorian Devon, religious interpretations were common, that the devil was walking through the region inspecting sinners or performing some ritual walk. Modern fringe theories have included UFOs, paranormal entities, or time-shifting creatures. None has credible evidence. The supernatural remains within the realm of folklore and narrative, rather than being considered a scientific possibility. Some researchers conclude that no single explanation accounts for all the evidence. Instead, they propose a mixture of causes, some genuine prints, perhaps from local animals or rodents under cold weather distortion, plus hoaxes in populated areas, plus exaggeration and retrospective embellishment in newspaper reports. In other words, the devil's footprints may be partly myth, partly natural anomaly, and partly human mischief. Over time, the story of the devil's footprints has passed into folklore, but scholars have periodically revisited the case. In 1994, folklorist and historian Mike Dash collected a trove of source material, newspapers, letters, and vicar records, and published The Devil's Hoof Marks. Source material on the Great Devon Mystery of 1855. He concluded that the track's odd behaviour likely stemmed from multiple sources, with some hoaxing involved and some natural prints misinterpreted, noting that none of the single theories held up to all reported facts. Modern skeptics also question the reliability of the original accounts. Many of the letters and reports were published days later, filtered through newspaper editors, and included hearsay. Eyewitness memory, especially in challenging circumstances such as snow, darkness, and panic, is unreliable. Snow conditions, thawing, wind, refreezing, may distort prints, amplify perception of straight paths, and erase subtle signs. It's plausible that some prints were exaggerated, conflated, or misreported in multiple villages. Moreover, some later reports describe footprints ceasing before certain homes or restarting beyond them, oddities that suggest variation in reportage or exaggeration. The absence of any single preserved original tracing or photograph further complicates verification. In short, the mystery resists resolution because our evidence is second-hand, inconsistent, and filtered through sensational press. The devil's footprints endure in public imagination because they evoke primal questions. A path across the snow with no discernible walker invites awe. The prints cross obstacles as though gravity, fences, doors, and rooftops were insignificant. They combine nature, legend, fear, and narrative into a perfect Victorian enigma. They also appeal to our desire for narrative. People want a story. The devil walking across the countryside is a potent image. A daring prankster, a forgotten creature, or a freak natural event provides tension and wonder. The marks also tap into themes of faith, the unknown, and the human need to explain anomalies. In 1855, religious sentiment was strong in Devon. The devil's footprints were viewed as more than odd prints. They were omens, portents, or divine warnings. In the modern era, the mystery is less about faith and more about the interplay of folklore, natural phenomena, human perception, and media. It reminds us of how easily wonder can escape explanation and how stories fill gaps left by lost data. Over 160 years later, the snow has melted, the villages have changed, and the eyewitnesses are gone. The devil's footprints remain in letters, periodicals, folk tales, and scholarly footnotes. They are footprints of a myth crawling through memory. They remind us that sometimes the most compelling mysteries are those we can only glimpse in frozen outlines, in silence broken by speculation. We may never know what crossed Devon that night, or how it bounded over walls and roofs. However, the tracks left their mark on folklore, curiosity, and the boundary where nature meets imagination. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Compact Mysteries podcast from compactmysteries.com. If you did, why not leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts? And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you would like to support us more directly, please consider buying us a coffee. Head on over to compacthistories.com/mysteries coffee to see how. Also, please check out our other Compact podcasts. You will find them all at compacthistories.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.